Hi everybody, welcome back to another episode of The Word Made Fresh, the weekly video Bible study and sermon prep resource where we talk about one of the upcoming lectionary passages. I'm Reverend Jim Keat, the digital minister at the Riverside Church, and today we're looking at the gospel text, Matthew 23, verses 1 through 12. Though we're only really going to focus on verse 3, because sometimes you might want to talk about the whole forest, but once in a while you just want to explore a single tree. So we're going to talk about practicing what you preach, we're going to talk about the difference between intent and impact, and we're going to talk about 5 ways to be anti-racist. Now I think it's going to make sense to you why we land there once we get there, but for now, let's just read the text. Matthew 23 verses 1 through, well, we're just going to read verses 1, 2, and 3. Then Jesus said to the crowds and to his disciples, "The scribes and the Pharisees sit on Moses' seat. Therefore, do whatever they teach you and follow it, but do not do as they do, for they do not practice what they teach." Now, I'm pretty sure that this text is the origin of the phrase, practice what you preach. At least in all of my digging, I couldn't find anything that predates it. But if you know of an origin story older than Matthew 23, verse 3, leave it in a comment below. But this idea, practice what you preach, it's central to the entire Bible. We often think that the Hebrew scriptures are just full of all these rules people had to follow or else they'd get in trouble by God. But they're not rules to follow because someone told you to, but they're an invitation to model what it means to be a reflection of God in the world. And the Christian scriptures pick this right back up with Jesus here calling people out because they're not practicing what they preach. And then there's the book of James that just flat out tells us faith without works is dead. You see, too often being a person of faith means that you just believe the right things, like you can think your way into heaven or something. But our beliefs need to go beyond our heads and into our hands and our feet, coming to life in the world around us. This is one of the reasons why the whole thoughts and prayers that everyone offers after a tragedy can tend to feel empty. I mean, thoughts and prayers are nice, but sometimes we need votes and action to actually change the things and make sure these tragedies stop repeating themselves. So practice what you preach, because actions speak a whole lot louder than words. Which leads us to the difference between intent and impact. To practice what you preach means you are aware of the impact of your actions, not just your intent. For example, it's one thing to act with all the right intentions, to think of all the right reasons for doing it, but if the impact is at all harmful or oppressive or misogynist or racist, well, then it's time to rewind, rethink, and try again. "Oh, but I didn't mean it that way" is not an excuse, especially if you come from any position of privilege. So, straight, white, cisgender men, this one is especially true for us. To practice what you preach means to value impact over intent, to be aware of the way your words and actions impact the people around you. Because most of the time we just think everything happens exactly as we intended it to happen, without really taking the time to ask the impact that it actually had. I mean, this is true of the good things we do in the world. The church often just goes from thing to thing to thing without even measuring or looking at the impact they had. But then here, for the negative things, I meant to do good, but the impact was harmful. Maybe I should rethink my intentions so that my actions can be better going forward. Because it's not about what you hoped would happen, it's about what actually happened, how it was experienced and received by the people around you. Which leads us to 5 ways to become more anti-racist. Because it's one thing to preach anti-racism, but it's another thing to take intentional and ongoing steps to become more and more and more and more and more anti-racist. It's really easy to have anti-racist intent, but still end up with a racist impact. White people, yeah, this one's really for us right now. So here we go. 5 ways to practice what we preach, to value impact over intent, and to become more and more intentionally and actively anti-racist. Number 1, hold your family and friends accountable. Now, this isn't always easy and it's often uncomfortable, but challenge yourself to engage in respectful conversation with people close to you when they make problematic comments. Yeah, you know the comments, and you probably already know who's made them. Now, sometimes their comments are intentionally malicious and racist, but other times they come from an implicit bias they don't even know they're operating from. And the burden to correct racist comments from white people cannot fall on people of color. That's the job of other white people, to lovingly and directly confront these comments for what they are and the impact that they have. Number 2, attend workshops, events, conferences, and protests that focus on race-related issues. Here's a couple ways to really make this practical. Here at Riverside, we have an anti-racism task force that is always working to coordinate workshops and events just like this. In fact, if you're watching this before October 29th, then you can still register for the anti-racism lab that they're leading. You can visit our website to find out more. There's a link right here on screen, and there's one you can click down in the description to find out more and to stay connected with all the amazing workshops and groups that they're facilitating now and in the future. Or another way, our friends at the General Commission on Religion and Race, part of the United Methodist Church, they've developed a few online courses all about this. These courses are on demand, so you can just sign up and take it at your own pace. They have one about implicit bias, there's one about first steps for white Christians on race and racism, and there's an anti-racism 101 course. I have personally explored all 3 of these, and I can tell you that they are all incredible resources. They're challenging, they're not always comfortable, but they are very necessary. Also, they didn't ask me to promote this or anything. I just really think these courses are that good, and I thought you should know about them. Number 3, diversify your knowledge and check your information bias. Take an audit of the movies and the TV shows you watch, the podcasts you listen to, the YouTube channels you follow. It's easy to surround ourselves with people who look and sound like ourselves, but it takes intentional work to diversify the information that we absorb. Number 4, learn with humility. You won't get it all right the first time, or probably even the second time, or the time after that, or the time after that, or the time after that. So admit when you're wrong, when you mess up, and be honest about the areas that you need to improve. Practice active listening, where you listen to understand rather than listening to respond. And when you choose to engage, don't assume that you know or understand the experiences of marginalized communities, especially those that you do not identify with. If people share their experience with you, be sure to affirm and validate their experiences while being cautious of the space that you are occupying. Speaking as a white, straight, cisgendered man, sometimes, let's be honest, oftentimes when I'm in a group conversation, I will literally bite my tongue as a way to physically remind myself that this is not about me talking and taking up more space, but I am here to listen and engage with what others are saying. Number 5, support the work, art, and businesses of people of color. This is one way that impact really comes to life. I mean, it's all nice and good to have anti-racist intentions, but when we actively support the work and art and business of people of color, we're counteracting the institutional and systemic barriers that have led to a lack of representation in so much of our world. And really, this requires us to open our eyes and see the movies and music and art and books and businesses that people of color are bringing to life all around us. And then we give them our attention. We promote their work on social media. We make donations to their organizations, and we buy what they're selling. We literally put our money where our mouth is, practicing what we preach, even or especially when it has an impact on our own personal budget. So, there you have it. Practice what you preach, be aware of the impact of your words and actions, and not just your intent, and be intentionally and actively anti-racist. But what else should be on this list? What are other ways that we can take steps to be more anti-racist? Go ahead and leave them in a comment down below, and then share your thoughts on anything I've said so far in a comment as well. And then we will be back next week with another episode of The Word Made Fresh, so I'll see you then. But before that, I'll see you down there in the comments. Bye!